If there's that much interest among members of the committee, then I think going to a vote is reasonable.
Sure.
Is everyone agree with that?
Mike, is Mike still with us?
Yeah, he is.
Yes, I
He's
am
in
here.
the top right hand corner. Oh, there it is.
Okay, so we will move on to,
Sorry.
we'll move on to nominee Sheriff Fairwater. Okay, so we'll do roll call. Bill?
No.
Cheryl? Yes. Sean?
No.
Lisa? Yes. Rich?
It might be a lot, because we're not voting one person against another person, we're just yes or no.
I don't know.
Wait, so somebody wins it.
Just let it play out. And
We'll see what happens.
Okay. So I'll say, I'll abstain.
Mike?
Abstain.
And myself, yes. So now we'll move on to nominee Sean Kennedy. Okay, roll call. Bill?
Yes.
Cheryl? Yes. Sean?
yes.
Lisa? Yes. Rich?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Myself, no. Okay, we will move on to nominee Mike Tirabassi. Roll call. Bill?
No.
Cheryl? Yes. Sean?
No.
Lisa? Yes. Rich?
Abstain.
Mike?
Yes.
And myself, yes.
And then Michelle.
So no, okay, so then we'll do, nominee myself, Michelle Boudreaux. Sorry, Michelle Boudreaux. Okay, Bill?
Yes.
Cheryl? Yes. Sean?
Yes.
Lisa? Yes. Rich?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And myself, yes. So the tallies are,
Michelle had 7. Sean had 6.
These competing against each other.
I don't know.
Top vote getters.
And then Bill was tied with Mike Tirabassi for 4 and 4.
okay.
Right?
Yep, so we'll do one more round.
Or
So
just,
we have-
is it just a runoff between Bill and
Bill,
Mike?
yeah, just on the next, so we have the 2 seats.
You're there, Sean.
Okay, so
Yeah,
Sean is on the finance committee,
with Michelle.
and I'm on the finance committee, so now we'll do roll call, so we're doing for Bill. Bill?
Yes.
Sure.
Are we doing Bill, Mike, or?
Yeah, we're doing Bill, and then we'll do Mike.
No, no, why
Bill,
not say Bill
okay,
or
say the
Mike?
name, sorry.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Bill.
Sure.
Mike.
Sean?
Bill.
Lisa? No pressure.
I'll go Mike.
Rich?
Bill.
Mike?
Mike.
The other tiebreaker.
Mike? I said Mike.
Congratulations.
Would we also need an alternate? You'd be interested in being an alternate?
Sure.
Okay. So finance subcommittee will be Sean Kennedy, Mike Tirabassi, myself, and Bill will be the alternate. We'll move on to curriculum. Curriculum Subcommittee provides initial review and recommendation on new or substantially revised curriculum. Reviews reports from the Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Professional Learning on the status of curriculum development and changes that are to be implemented in previously approved curricula. The meetings are as needed. Are there members that are interested in being on the subcommittee?
I'd like to remain on the subcommittee.
Cheryl?
I'll be on it then.
Okay, Lisa? Anyone else? Mike, Rich,
Yeah, so we need a Hampton representative, right?
Yeah.
Bill, or Sean? No?
No.
Mike? Okay.
Mike, was that a yes? Do you want to be on that committee?
If someone else is willing to serve that has a volunteer, I'm happy to, but otherwise, I sense that my preference would be
Okay.
So Cheryl, Lisa,
So curriculum subcommittee will be Sheriff Caruana, Lisa Murray, and Rich Rediker. We will move on to the LPVEC Collaborative Representative. As a member of the Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative, and an alternate for curriculum. Anyone interested? I'll be the alternate. The LPVEC Collaborative Representative, as a member of the Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative, HWRSD works with neighboring districts in the development and operation of high-quality, cost-effective education-related services in the areas including special education, vocational technical education programs, and transportation. The school committee representative reviews the LPVEC strategic goals, the LPVEC budget, and the associated assessment to HWRSD, and those meetings are monthly. Do I have anyone interested in being on the collaborative?
I would like to be on it.
Anyone else? Okay, so Lisa will be the representative for the collaborative. So we'll move on to the LPVEC Corporation representative. The Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Corporation, LPVEC, was organized in 1981 and is a separate organizational entity from the Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative. The corporation has a separate board of directors, holding separate meetings and generally maintaining a separate financial system. The current utilization of the LPVEC is the holding of title to real estate to be used for educational purposes by the LPVEC and/or the member school districts. Those meetings are monthly. I believe they're actually more quarterly.
who was it before?
That was me.
Was you? And then I was before that too, for a long time. It's a good thing to get your beak wet, so to speak, on what it's like to be part of Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative, but this is just the business side. This is we want to fix the elevator, we have to allocate that money, we want to sell this property, we want to buy that property. That's what the basic, would you say that's a fair assessment? Yeah.
Any interest from anybody?
No one wants it on the line too, because I do want to get my feet wet in finance.
Anyone else? Okay, sure. You will be the LPVEC corporate representative. Okay, so we are moving on to Mars representative. The Massachusetts Association of Regional Schools represents and advocates for the interests of regional school districts. The meetings are, they have monthly meetings in Central Mass, and they do one in Western Mass. How much did we show?
I think that was more, but I would be interested if no one else wants it.
I believe they meet during the day, is that correct?
This may be that one.
Usually it's like 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. Mike, is that something that you can do 10 o'clock in the morning? Oh wait, Cheryl already said she wants to do it.
Yeah, I was thinking that I probably am the only one who has that time available.
There you go.
Thank you.
Second.
We move on to the MASS conference rep. But I don't think we represents the school committee at the annual fall conference to vote on the resolutions brought before the members. All school committee members can attend the conference.
I nominate Sean.
I second that if he wants to do it. So,
Any interest? You
Yeah,
interested?
okay.
Okay, so Sean will be our rep. We'll move on to negotiations. Responsible for developing and recommending negotiation strategy for unionized staff. The meetings are frequently weekly during negotiations. We are in the second year of our contract, so we do not foresee negotiations needing to happen, so. But we still
How
should,
long is the contract?
3 years, so we're in the second of the 3-year.
But it would be important in
It's
case
also
there's
important.
impact bargaining or something that happens, you know. So I was on this committee before, and it was you, right?
Mhm.
And who was the third? And Patrick.
So is there anyone else that's interested in being on the committee?
Anyone's needed, I'm happy to, be there too, when needed.
Would you mind if Mike would do this, or is that something you're having interest in?
I mean, when it comes time to negotiations, whatever you guys say, here to help out.
Sure.
Needs help, whenever you need help.
Sure. Rich?
whoever's speaking other than Sean, please make sure you turn on your microphone. I can't hear what's being said.
Okay.
I think it's good to have a Hampton rep.
Yeah, Michelle. Also, it'll be 2 Hampton reps, and that's fine.
Yeah,
That's fine.
That's fine.
I'll just show up. Okay. That's okay. Policies are next. So provides initial review and makes recommendations on new policies. Responsible for ongoing review and revision of HWRSD policy manual. So the meetings are currently monthly and or as needed. Is anyone interested in being on policy?
That's always great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do have to say,
On policy.
Okay. Mike?
Mike,
I've been on policy for 6 years. I've been doing it, but no one else wants to.
Cheryl. Is it 2 or 3?
What's 3?
Were you on it before?
And then Patrick replaced me.
Okay.
You didn't like it.
You want to be Patrick?
I can do it if nobody else wants it.
Sure.
Okay. And then an alternate?
Mike, Cheryl, Bill.
I can be an alternate. If there's no alternate. Sure.
Do we have an alternate for negotiations?
We can't have an alternate for negotiation.
Oh, you're right, because we're, yeah, gotcha.
Okay. So is that policy, so it's Bill, Mike, and Cheryl?
Yep.
And Lisa as an alternate? Okay.
Oh, Lisa, that was you.
Give me a second, Jen. Scantic Valley Regional Health Trust, responsible for representing the district as an alternate to the primary board member, which is Assistant Superintendent for Business, which is Aaron Osborne, in joint negotiations and purchase of health and life insurance coverages. So those meetings are monthly during the school year.
Who was that before, Mara?
Okay. Can we continue to have Christina as alternate?
Is everyone okay with that?
Who's it? Oh, yeah, Christina's before him, yeah. Who was on it before? Was it Mara?
It was Christina, she's the alternate.
No, who's a school committee member?
I think we delegated Christina to be in our place.
Yeah, Christina's
Okay. Sure.
So the next is the superintendent evaluation, responsible for ensuring the fair and timely annual evaluation of the HWRSD superintendent. Makes recommendations to the full school committee on an annual summative evaluation. And those meetings are as needed when the time
I've been on it.
And we're definitely gonna do one this year, right? Because it's every 2 years that it gets done. He's entering his 2nd year, so this will be an active committee.
comes. It's been 3 people.
I will do it. I've done it before.
Okay. Who else is interested?
The description here says it's a late for some evaluation.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
The but that's.
Well, I was just unsure of the evaluation.
It does say annual, but I think what it was is because we've recently changed that we're doing the superintendent evaluation every 2 years as opposed to every year.
Yeah, I'll do it if somebody else wants it.
Just a typo.
So Cheryl, Bill, and Mike, is that what it was?
Mike said you were-
Mike, did you say you wanted to be on it?
I'm happy to. Sure, I'm happy to.
Okay. What is Lisa?
I didn't know there was already three. I was on.
Oh,
Okay, so Cheryl's interested, Bill, Mike, you're interested or not interested?
Mike, are you interested?
I'm interested, but happy to step aside if somebody else really wants to do it. To repeat, I'm interested, but happy to step aside if someone else wants to do it.
Okay, so Bill, Cheryl, and myself.
Oh, you, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's great. Okay. So technology, responsible for recommending directions, strategies, and action plans surrounding district technology planning and development.
We should roll technology into finance and operations.
Okay.
We don't have to.
Do you want to continue doing that? So I think maybe,
So I work for a technology company, and I've always worked, so I kind of want to be a part of that just because that's part of what I do. But I think, yeah, that's how we did it before, so it would be so it would be myself, Mike Terabasi, and you. So just, yeah, but then, yeah, we have Rich for technology as well. Yeah, keep it as a separate subcommittee
yeah,
then.
we can try that.
Okay.
And then if it comes together, everything comes as a full committee anyway, so it's not,
Yeah,
it's going to be a siloed.
so Sean, Rich, and then anyone else want to be the third? Did you say? And Bill?
Okay, so the technology committee will be Bill, Sean, and Rich. And I believe that is everything.
Do you want me just to go through out loud who everyone is, just to make sure we're all good? We decided not to pick an audit, right? And then for the finance and operations, it will be Kennedy, Terabasi, and Boudreau. For curriculum, it's Cheryl, Lisa, Rich, with Michael as the alternate. The LPEC collaborative representative is Lisa. The corporation representative is Cheryl. The Mars representative is Cheryl. MASC, MASS conference rep is Sean. Negotiations is Sean, Michelle, and Rich. And policy manual is Mike, Cheryl, and Bill, with Lisa as the alternate. Scantic Valley Regional Health Trust is again Christina. And then the superintendent evaluation is Cheryl, Bill, and Michael. And technology is Sean, Rich, and Bill. Was that correct?
Is Scandic not me with Christina as an alternate?
Yes.
That's what's
Okay, okay.
yes.
Oh, okay, yeah, that she's the alternate.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, Erin and then Christina's alternate.
Okay.
All right, next we will just touch on our schedule for the meetings for the 23-24 school year. So the schedule that's currently in the folder, it maintains our current schedule at the first and third Thursday of every month. And I believe we've confirmed that there are no conflicts with open houses and back-to-school nights or concerts that may be scheduled.
Well, concerts probably haven't been scheduled yet. Did you have a calendar in here, I think, that we can to check for open houses?
Okay, so we'll address that next time. Okay. So I guess one of the conversations with, so for start time, we changed the start time last year, so our meetings begin at 6:30. Does that work for everybody? Are people looking for an earlier meeting than 6:30?
I certainly wouldn't go earlier, 7 is better.
Yeah, let's keep it at 6:30 then, if that's all right. That's good.
Anyone else?
Mike, is that with you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. And we will be doing all of the meetings here for, so we are able to properly stream and people can view and hear. We do have some issues when we are in the other buildings as far as like space and just, we end up with technological difficulties. So we will have them here, but we will be inviting groups from the various schools to come and do different things as the year comes. So that will be announced at the timing of those meetings. Okay. All right, moving on, we're going to move on to old business, and we are going to have the Booster Club discussion. We do have representation from the Booster Club.
Actually, hang on one more second. Was that a vote, or was that a, I thought we had to have school committee meetings due to the, when the settlement of the lawsuit said that we were required to have meetings in Hamden.
I don't know, I could go check the settlement.
Okay.
Bill,
So,
do you remember?
Not off the top of my head, no, I'm actually thinking about it.
okay, so it looks like we do need to have
We
it
do, right?
muted.
Yeah.
So we will just have to make sure that we are able to be streaming it, everyone's able to hear. Hopefully this new microphone system that we do have has improved the quality of our meetings and people being able to access it with our streaming on YouTube, thanks to Dave Sanders, who I did not, okay, so thank you.
So we can pick that time
So
at
we'll
a
determine
later
that.
date.
Once we know that there are no conflicts, so I think it's important that we look at our school committee meeting schedules and making sure that there are no conflicts with each of the buildings and making sure that, we don't have conflicts and making sure there's no holidays falling on those dates either.
I'm not trying to throw a wrench into things, it was just something that we
Sure.
agreed to as a settlement.
So moving on to the old business, the Booster Club discussion, we do have two representatives from the Booster Club. We have Rhonda Curcio and we have Mike Flynn here. So if you wouldn't mind, there is a microphone in front of you, so just make sure that the button is pressed and you speak into the microphone, but I'll...
Green
Alright,
means
so
go.
I'll invite you to...
Yeah, I'm not sure how you want to start, so I'm not sure how you want to start, but Mike Flynn wanted to come because he was here at the birth of the Booster Club, so I figured that might be a good starting point to talk about what the purpose of the Booster Club and what it wanted to accomplish. So
Please.
Hi, everyone. Good evening, Madam Chair, school committee members. I'm Mike Flynn, actually a resident of Wolverhampton for many, many years, and Hamden before that. A little history of the Booster Club. The club was started back in the, restarted actually there, back in the mid-'80s. It was restarted by Ned Doyle, the athletic director, who's here for many years. My mother, Sheila Flynn, and Mary Ellen Glover, to be reenacted actually, because we had a lot of problems occurring at that time. We had 5 major booster clubs who were hitting residents about every week for money. The same people, the same time, and the community was getting awful upset. It was a very tough situation. It also actually had a lot of, truthfully, illegal actions going on, including embezzlement. During that time, around most of the New England area, there was a lot of those problems. So the school committee met with a group of people actually that sat down, decided to make a change and have one organization allow for fundraising for the Booster Club. And it's an all-encompassing Booster Club, as you see by the bylaws, that it covers all activities of sports at Minijob. It was extended to HWRSD back in my reign, actually around the 2000s, because we had a lot more going on at the middle schools at that time. But beforehand, actually, there again, why it started actually because of the problems that were occurring. It really was, and it was going on actually. A lot of the booster clubs, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. And this is something that the school committee didn't want to have happen here. It was happening, they wanted to shut it down fast. A little background, we had 3 different types of fundraising groups at that time. We had the club organization, which was run actually at that time, Gary Petzl students. We had the Booster Club for the band, which I was heavily involved in. And Mrs. Caruana could say that real clear. But And we have the Minnetonka sports side of it as well, too. All these were coordinated together. We ran it through Gary's office, so we didn't have 3 or 4 organizations running a car wash at the gas station at the center of town at the same day. So it was coordinated through the main focus, actually, so everybody was keyed up actually what they were doing. This was actually part of the organization actually that was done at that time. And again, all funds were determined to be put in the different groups. So you couldn't do fundraising actually for soccer unless it was approved by the Booster Club and then coordinated to make sure there wasn't something happening with the clubs at the same time, or even the band boosters at that point. So that's why the communication was very clear at that point when it was created. And it actually followed very well. A little background, Ron's held the position of president of the Booster Club for almost 15 years. I was a member for over 20 years, president for 15 years. So that gives you a long span between the two of us right here. I had 2 daughters go through the system here. Ron had 2 children as well go through here. So we're pretty well versed in what's happening actually and what happened over the years. The key issue we have now, and why we're coming in front of you there, is what happened back in the 80s is happening again today. Whether that happened because of our problem with COVID, that we all know about, things actually changed the dynamics of how we operate and what we do. But it happened at that point there. So we have organizations that are not working together. We have organizations that are not bringing the money that collected actually under the name of Minnetonka Regional High School back to the organization that belongs there. And this causes a lot of problems. It causes a lot of hard feelings, and it hurts the community itself. It shouldn't happen, and it's important that the school committee be the group actually that's in charge, because we report to the school committee. We always have. We started, and we still have today. You're the guidance of the Booster Club. It's your authority actually there. If we are not here, it's still your authority. So anyway, turning it to Ron, it gives you a little background of what happened over the years, now where we are today. Thank you.
So as Mike said, I basically inherited the Booster Club from Mike, and the way it works is each team has a spirit account, if you will. The way that spirit representation is determined has morphed over the years. When I first started doing it, we had parents who say, okay, I'm the soccer spirit rep. And they would say, we need new soccer balls. I would go to the athletic director and to the coach to confirm that. And a few times it's been, I don't know who that parent is. We don't need new soccer balls. So to me, the best representation of what these sports need is the athletic director and the coach. You've heard my spiel before, and I don't want to go through it again, but it's recently come up because you increase the user fees. My goal has always been to subsidize, if you will, it might be too strong of a word, the athletic department budgets. And that's through what I call the proper use of those funds that are collected to enhance, if you will, the athletic budget for equipment and infrastructure. We've pretty much gotten that mandate when this school was being built. We didn't know what shortcomings the construction was going to have, didn't know what infrastructure it would need or if it needed equipment. So at that point, I think with the school committee, let's just focus on equipment and infrastructure. So that's what we've been doing all along. It's not cut in stone that it has to be that way, but because of the concern that there might be shortcomings in new construction, that's what we focused on. And then kind of, from my own personal opinion, that kind of was a lockstep with me of trying to keep those user fees down to a certain helping hand, if you will. So that's what we've been doing, at least all along since I've taken over. I think it was pretty much that way anyway when Mike was doing it as well. But as Mike said, it's clearly up to this committee if you want to change that and open up how the dollars are spent. But that was pretty much the process and the direction that I've gotten all these years. I know there's an interest in maybe spending monies in a different direction, but I also know that could be in conflict with trying to keep the user fees down. And you want to, at least my opinion, you want to put those dollars towards those efforts in keeping the user fees down. I don't know if everybody got, Principal Hale did a pretty good job in summarizing how the Booster Club works. I made one correction to that, is that 100% of the dollars raised by that specific sport goes into that sports ledger account. So each sport has its own ledger, which is with a balance in it. The Booster Club, what I'll call the main Booster Club, collects revenues from the $25 membership. And just a recap, the membership fee is $25 per family, whether you have 1 kid or 17 kids, whether you play 1 sport or 12 sports, it's only $25. So that's part of the revenue that the Booster Club collects. The other revenue we get from the concessions at whether it's football games, soccer games, lacrosse games, we get the concessions from that. And lastly, we get revenues from the Booster Club itself has a discount card. If you ever went to the Village Mart, they sell them there, and there's different vendors on that card too. So that even has to be coordinated, because some of the sports teams also do discount cards, and we've got to make sure that we're not repeating the vendors on those cards as well, because one of the goals is not to keep, Mike alluded to it, not to keep going back and forth to the same business. After a while, they'll get tired of it and say no, and stop asking me for money or discounts. What we do with those dollars, and this was not in the details that Steve had, is typically we match, we being main Booster Club account, and currently there's, I think, $88,000 in there. We match dollar for dollar. So this past spring, the Spirit rep reached out to the coach and said, hey, do you think, Coach, do you think we need to do a fundraiser? She copied me on that email to the coach. I came back and said, you currently have, it's close to, they have like $7,000 or $8,000. So what I alluded to, if you really have no expenditures, you don't need to do a fundraiser, because we don't want to pollute the fundraising out there, as Mike alluded to. But the coach did say he would like to get a pitching machine for the baseball team. Confirmed with the athletic director that was a good expenditure of money, and we purchased that for the baseball team. So their balance went from, let's just say $7,000. Pitching machine was $3,000. So we subtracted $1,500 from the baseball account, and we subtracted $1,500 from this $88,000 that the Booster Club has. So we matched the dollar 50 for 50. So that $88,000, I like to keep almost to that 50% mark, because all the other teams have about maybe $110,000, $113,000. So if we had to match dollar for dollar, the Booster Club $88,000 is a little short of that. So some people might say, you got a lot of money in there, do something with it. But it's the way the Booster Club works, and what we tell the folks is that we match dollar for dollar, so we have to keep that balance at that level. And as long as I've been doing it, that's how it has functioned. But we never know if there's going to be expenditures. That's why we like to go to the coaches and the athletic director to determine what's on their plate. The biggest expenditures, I think it's on the 3-year cycle, is lacrosse helmets and football helmets. They got to be reconditioned and turned around. I think it's every 3 years. I'm not certain of that. So I don't know what else, or if you have any specific questions.
We received a,
Sure, turn the microphone.
thank you. We received a lot of emails from families, sports families, and it seems to me that the common thread in those emails is that the families worked hard with their children to raise money went in, and then no one knew what it was used for. Could you tell us a little bit about the communication with the families that actually fund the $88,000?
Hang on for 1 second. Joe, would you mind, if, before he answers that, if we can just have to find out who is serving now on the committee, and get a little more specifics about where the gate receipts go and how a sport earns money for themselves. Is that okay? Okay.
So who's on the?
What we're going to do here. So who serves on on the committee right now?
If I can get to that in a few minutes, and there's a reason for that. So who serves on the committee now?
Okay. Sure. And then, so gate receipts for the football game.
Yeah, I think we went through that, or at least the April meeting I was here.
Yeah, I'm just asking for it again. So,
Okay.
so the gate receipts, how does that work?
I think the superintendent knows that better than I do. How the gate receipts work and MIAA and what goes to the school district, what goes to MIAA. None of that goes to the booster.
That's specifically for a tournament play. So for non-tournament games, I would defer to the principal who's saying he has the answer.
Yeah, we get, sorry, I don't have a microphone, but I'll use my teacher voice. Gate receipts for all home games where we collect gate receipts, right? There's a cross-country meet, we don't collect gate receipts because it's impossible to do that. So basically it's regulated to the stadium. Any gate receipts from the stadium go to the athletic department revenue side of the budget. And when I did my profit and loss at the last meeting, you will see the revenue side of a 3-year average. I did not use the 2 COVID years in determining that. Now that we've moved to the state tournament, the first 2 rounds, if you are the home team, you get the gate receipts. After the first 2 rounds, the gate receipts goes to the MIA. So the booster club does not less your costs of operating the game. So if you get a police officer to be at the game, you get to deduct that from the gate receipts.
And then, but there's no so if say football has, or soccer have the most money in gate receipts, you just put it into the group of money. It's not like allocated.
You're missing the concept. Gate receipts are not given to booster clubs, it's to the athletic club.
Right, that's what I'm asking.
Like you said, booster clubs.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's
Did I?
the athletic club.
I meant the athletic.
The only thing I'd clarify is, although we track the gate receipts, so football has 5 home games, we collected, $5,000 from those 5 home games. We categorize it as that, but we don't only spend that money on football. It goes into the overall athletic department's budget and the overall profit and loss of expenditures and revenue for the overall program. We don't keep that revenue separate, but we do categorize it separately so we can track it.
All right, great. And then can we get the answer now on who serves on the committee?
Well, yeah, I guess what I'll do is read what I have here.
So just from your bylaws, it says there's a president, a first vice president, a second vice president, a recording secretary, a treasurer, and then there's board of directors, a quorum being 7 here. So does that mean there's 13 members altogether?
No, I think the number would be 9.
9? Okay, so the quorum is 7.
4 and 7 for me, just like you.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
So with that, the answer to the question is currently as if this committee accepts my letter. Currently, there are no members of the Booster Club board. And that is because I'll read this. At its May 11, 2003 board meeting, I informed the Minnetonka Regional High School Booster Club that I would be stepping down from my role on the board. As you may not know, the Commonwealth is moving towards a decarbonized future, and my involvement in that goal will not allow me the proper time and dedication needed to make the Booster Club successful. I would like to thank the many variations of the school committee who entrusted me to fulfill their mission towards the Athletic Booster Club, which is to sustain equity amongst the various sports and to keep user fees at reasonable levels. I am proud that all of it that has been accomplished during my tenure, accomplishments that could not have been attained without the support of the high school administration, the many coaches that I have the privilege of working with, and of course the thousands of Minnetonka Regional High School Booster Club supporters. What I now realize I left out, I'd like to thank the facilities folks and as well as the maintenance folks, because I worked hand in hand with them any time we needed something. they were right there to support it.
When does that take effect?
It depends on.
I would like to ask and request that you follow, as the Booster Club, if you could follow your own established bylaws, just to ensure that there will be, that officers will exist, and directors duly authorized to act on behalf of the Booster Club in order to work through any issues involving the ownership of funds, disposition of funds, and ensuring that all accounting for the books is possible. And then that way we can have the vote for the next board to come forth.
Yeah, the present board has to vote for the next board, right?
Well, that's, if you want to, so typically, yes, that's the way the bylaws.
That's what the bylaws say, yeah. Let's just step back for a second. So before this letter, before that letter was created, who was the president of the?
Me.
You, okay. Who was the first vice president?
I don't have that information. I don't know who the actual titles are. I can go through who was on the board.
Yeah.
Mike Flynn.
Yeah.
Scott Taylor. Dan Sheen. I'm freezing up here. Edna Lavoy, who's been a long-time treasurer. She used to work in the guidance office. Cheryl Comm. I might be leaving one or two out. So I'll condition that with, with COVID and all that stuff, we have not had 9. So we've been short of a few folks as well. During COVID, we didn't have regularly scheduled meetings. The Booster Club was somewhat inactive because the sports were somewhat inactive. So we suspended membership fees and all that type of stuff. And we still bought some equipment and infrastructure during that time frame. I think I'm leaving somebody out. Someone's going to get insulted. But
yeah. So we would look for these people to help nominate your successors, right? Based on your bylaws.
If I can get them back, because I didn't finish. Also, at the May 11th meeting, the Booster Club's board also decided that they would be stepping down, stating that it was time for new ideas. And one thing that's very important to me, as best practices would dictate, my last request of the school committee would be that an audit be conducted of the Booster Club financial activity before I leave. So.
And this was May 11th?
Yes. Yep. And so just to condition that too, I had decided to step down around this time last year when the then current athletic director was leaving. I agreed to stay on for some continuity and so as you all know, Commonwealth is in a big move to decarbonize and electrify, and that's the business I'm in, and it's taking up a lot of my time. So I can certainly try to gather them up for that. I can't guarantee that they're going to be willing to do that, and I apologize for that, but when I step down, they step down.
We would need 7 people, because that's the quorum, to come back to help pick out their successors. Because if we don't, isn't all that money frozen? Isn't all that money? Huh?
Well, if there's no Booster Club anymore, we'll go back to the school.
There's nothing in the bylaws that says that. Actually, the school committee is not even mentioned in your bylaws.
So we're also just looking into the authority of the school committee over the Booster Club and the funds that it currently holds. So we are referring to legal counsel on that to research and get a legal opinion.
Okay.
Just on our authority.
Yeah, I don't know that aspect of it.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, I'm going off the bylaws, off just their bylaws. I'm not even talking, because the bylaws don't even mention the school committee. So I'm just going by the bylaws here. We need to have a quorum of 7 people, and the 7 people have to nominate who is going to come afterwards. And it doesn't say anything here that if there are no officers, what happens to that money? It doesn't say anywhere. I'm not saying you're saying that you report to the school committee, and as Michelle just said, we're not sure of that. But that's the question.
My assumption
Is there? Do you think it's possible for you to get 7 people back to have a quorum so that you can elect? Okay. All right.
If we go back to the other discussion about you have to go back in the records, actually, when it was created, Booster Club, and the authority came from the school committee. The authority did not come from anywhere else. So again, if you go back to the original bylaws and what they were written, if I could get actually a hold of Ned, I know Ned would certainly have it still in his system. That's how it was created. And again, it was created under their auspices. We are not a 501(c)(3). We are a strict organization with the authority of the school committee to advertise for the name of Minichog for sports.
Yeah,
But you are not a 501(c)(3).
No,
No, we're not, no.
you can't be a
We're just-
501(c)(3) if we're going to do what we do for that.
We're just like any other club of the school. And that's why, if you recall, when we were building, I think you were on the committee at the time, when we were going to do the turf field,
Yep.
then we created a 501(c)(3). We came to the board and said, we want to use your name to create a 501(c)(3) for the turf field. So that's not under the guise of the school committee. That's a separate and distinct, sort of private 501(c)(3). So this is just like any other club that you have at the high school.
Can we go back to my question?
Yep.
Yeah.
Communication.
Thank you, Sharon. Yep.
So, the ice hockey people get together and they do, with their kids and their families, they do a fundraiser, and money comes in for ice hockey. Tell me where the money goes then.
Directly into their Spirit account.
And how do they know how much went into Spirit? Because does Spirit only get funded by ice hockey, or does some of that ice hockey money go to baseball?
Like I said, 100% of what they fundraise goes into that sports ledger account.
So everything that the ice hockey took in went into ice hockey. And do parents get the parents who donated, did they get any kind of a receipt or some sort of paper trail saying, thank you so much for your donation of $50 went to X, or we really appreciate it here at...
You would have to ask that. That's a fundraiser that they did, so I don't,
So that's where I'm murky.
So what happens is we'll use hockey. Hockey wanted to do a fundraiser. The process is that, I mentioned how baseball didn't do a fundraiser. So typically what happens is the parents don't decide that we're doing a fundraiser. That's got to be determined by, first of all, it's got to be a need. If there's a need, typically if the Spirit rep is a parent, lately a lot of the coaches want to be the Spirit rep, and I can go into that if you want. So whoever it is will say, okay, you know what, we need money for X, Y, or Z. I will confer that with the coach and the athletic director. If it's deemed a viable fundraiser, if you will, because there's a need, then we'll go forward with it. And typically the coach or parent representation, who's typically is the same as the Spirit rep, will conduct that fundraiser. It's not a 501(c)(3), so you don't have receipts to deduct it, from what you're doing. And there's a trust factor there, that whatever they collect, Mike alluded to it, in the early days it wasn't happening. 100% of what they collect has to be turned over to the Booster Club, so in turn, they put it into that sports ledger.
What would be the harm of them telling in a flyer or?
So you asked a question. So every year in the membership form, we list all the stuff that was purchased. So that's how they would know. Because if the next year if they're going to be a member, they see on the bottom of that form, and I do not have a form with me, it lists all the things that we bought. Most of the things, all the big items anyway.
And does it have a dollar amount?
No.
I think that's what, at least some of the parents that...
Cheryl, could I allude to actually what happened there, because it refers to what happened before.
Can you take get a
I'm sorry, I thought I yelled off. It's okay.
Hasn't changed in years. Where was established years ago, and most parents sit here at that point, when we were talking about this, allude back to raising money for a party at the end of the year. Ned Doyle and Mike, previous athletic directors, were very involved in trying to stop this problem. We want to get a party and everything else at that point there. That's not a fundraising effort. As Ron alluded to, the fundraising is for products that the school department needs for the athletics. there. It's not for a party. Actually, when I had my children there, we went to each parent. Here's a ticket at that point there. Paid for the ticket, that paid for the dinner or whatever they did at that point. And that's how it was done and established. Honestly, actually there, if someone needed actually and someone couldn't afford, the ticket was a little higher anyway, so it covered anybody else that had an issue. But they were funded by the parents at that point. It wasn't done by a fundraiser. I never went out and asked someone for money to pay for me to have something and a meal for something at that point. It didn't seem right, and it sure isn't something from this district that would ever stand up for. It didn't make a lot of sense. But again, this happened for years. I remember for 20 plus years, plus the 15 there. That's not what we did. It was very clear that it wasn't supposed to be done that way. Then tried to do a couple years in a row where you have get together in the old high school, actually in the cafeteria. All the teams were there from the different seasons. At that point, we broke up, gave letters to the students at that point, pins, depending on what we're doing. So that was actually to kind of eliminate this problem that was occurring. So, and again, whatever sport it was, whether it was tennis, they had pizza actually at the tennis courts. Whether it was this, I mean, a very, very small scale at that point. There wasn't an elaborate system going on. But fundraising wasn't used for that purpose. It wasn't used to pay for those type of things. It sure wasn't used to pay for alcohol, ever. But again,
I don't think anybody, no one's contacted me and said anything like this, that was what it was for. I think it was more for uniforms and
well, again,
equipment and things like that.
Well, actually, it wasn't actually there, but uniforms and equipment would come, the athletic director working with the Booster Club would be asking those questions. Not a spirit rep. The coach and the athletic director are the ones that would go forward with the equipment that's needed for that. Uniforms, paid for that part of it there. If we can help the athletic fund over the years, and Steve was here and Marty before that, it comes out actually there that we could pay for allotment of ice time they had to do, which was a physical asset for the year. We would actually basically fund that part of their budget, and Mike or Ned or the new athletic director would have extra money in his budget to do other things. That's the process that would happen. One year, and I was mentioning that, I think at a meeting we got together with the superintendent, it's an issue about getting larger buses actually there, meaning more coaches. Buses actually when they went to play skiing. The reason for that was, and actually for your kids as well too, is because they studied on the bus back and forth. Because there was a late getting back at that point, hopefully they're doing some education on that part. Well, that didn't come out of athletic funds at that point. That was a bunch of parents getting together paying for the bus. Because it was wanted to be done, there wasn't funds for it. A couple phone calls were made and we had the funds available at that point to pay for it. There was a proper purpose for that part of it there, an educational purpose. It wasn't having a party. And I can tell you the years of I've been through it, the tickets is how it was done. Some teams didn't do that, and discussions were done and it wasn't done again later on. So again, actually there, the key issue is fundraising for a proper purpose. It was for equipment needed. I sat on the building committee for the new high school for many years. And again, what we couldn't fund, a lot of the organizations who helped fund that part of it there, the Booster Club did an awful lot for athletics over those years.
And I don't doubt that, and from what I can hear from this discussion, I think the missing link is just the communication back to the parents of the dollar amounts that were funded,
yeah, I can tell you,
raised, and things.
I can tell you that the communication is between, of how many dollars they have in their account is between the coaches and the athletic director, because they're ultimately making the decision if they have enough money to fundraise. And if there's not, then the coaches would go to, if they elected a spirit rep or a parent rep, they would go to that parent rep and say, listen, we need to buy the cross helmets this year. We want to do this fundraiser. Could you help us with the fundraiser? And then they know that they bought helmets. The specific dollar amounts, never made a practice of doing that. Certainly, if that's what the practice wants to be going forward, I don't have an opinion one way or the other, but I can tell you the practice has been, because the decision makers are the coaches, the athletic director. That's who can communicate it to what dollars they have, because they know what they want to purchase. But if this, well, now we don't know if the Booster Club reports to this committee, but if the committee wants to open that up to show everybody, that's your business. It's never been the practice since I've been here. But like I said, when I gave the example of the baseball team, you know, she reached out to the coach and said, hey, do you want to do a fundraiser? That's the start of the proper communication. And from me then taking the ball and speaking with the coach, he had no fundraising needs. But when that parent asked if you want to do a fundraiser, I communicated to both that parent and the coach what their balance was.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think you're right, the more communication we have with the stakeholders, the better.
Yeah, so I'll just caveat that, and Mike was alluding to this as well. There have been fundraising that was done that did not get the permission from the Booster Club, and there's fundraising that was done that those proceeds were not turned over to the Booster Club. And that's what Mike is alluding to. Back in the day, it was like the Wild West. People were doing fundraising and using the money for whatever they wanted to do. And there is some, it's really not the overall majority, it's a minority. There are some fundraisings that I believe had been done, that those monies were not, number one, the fundraising didn't get the permission of the Booster Club, and to, like Mike said, we like to coordinate those events to make sure that, you know, five organizations are not at the high school doing a bottle and can drive. You know, so we typically coordinate that, and I do coordinate that with the student activities. And then, those dollar amounts, I think it's in the bylaws. I've been around so long that I don't read the bylaws anymore. Those dollars have to be turned over to the Booster Club. So I think that's become a little lax. Maybe it's due to COVID, I don't know, but it's been a little lax.
So how much money was raised by the hockey
Well,
group?
before we get to that, actually, the first question would be, was hockey approved to do a fundraiser?
Okay, you have the money?
No,
So I know, whether it was approved or not, I don't know.
That's a very big step.
Yeah, but that's not the question I'm asking right now. I'm asking how much money did you guys, how much money did you add to their bucket, right?
What I added to their bucket is different than what they raised. They raised $15,662. I don't know what this organization took off the top. I'm going to assume that the math is correct. So what was deposited into is the check that we received.
Yep.
And so just part of this, since this is the topic of conversation, I have on my phone a text string looking for that check. I think there's been some innuendos that I held on to the check, didn't deposit it right. Well, I have an email string seeking out this organization to where the heck is the check. And finally got to the bottom of it. I think it was misplaced into one of the mail slots that Cheryl Palm finally found it. As soon as we had it, it got deposited into their ledger account.
And the check was for?
The check was for, if I could read good, $12,186.30. So, and just so to finish with that, about a week or two later, I get an email from the athletic director saying that they got a bill for hockey locker room, which was $1,500 or $1,700, asking, can the Booster Club pay for this? I said, this is a perfect use for that money. Took 50% of that amount out of the ice hockey ledger and took 50% of that amount out of the Booster Club ledger and paid for that bill. And what I said to him was, this amount is perfect for ice time. Ice time is your most expensive cost in hockey. That's what it should go to.
Okay. So how much was that?
The locker room rental?
Yeah.
What does that say, Mike?
Is it okay that I'm asking these questions or not?
Yeah, but it doesn't have a mic that works.
Yeah, so I think because we're still looking for legal, we're waiting on guidance from our legal counsel and legal opinion.
I'm just asking for numbers. I'm not making any decisions or anything like
We
that.
just don't know
Actually, if I answer the question, about $1,700.
No, the amount that was taken out of each account was $750. So it was $1,500. That's it.
The only other thing I would like to ask, I don't know if this is whatever, but of this $15,000 that's in the bucket of
$12,000.
The $12,000 that's in the bucket for the hockey parents, right, or the hockey team. However, it's the boosters, the booster bucket. So actually, that actually translates to $24,000, right? Because anything that you would pay for would come half out of this and half out of the boosters.
Those are expenditures, so.
Right. Is that correct or not? I'm just
No,
asking the
again,
process.
if you've got to go back again on that part of it there, is the expenditures isn't double that depending on what they're buying.
Right, so
You got to go back to what's being bought.
So the locker room time,
rental was, the expense was $1,500 in total.
right.
So out of that $1,500, $750 was taken out of the hockey legend, $750 was taken out of the booster club.
Right. Now, what about like this trip that they went on?
I had nothing to do with that. That was a surprise to me. I had no idea that was a
So
story.
the booster does not support that event, or?
Well,
Huh?
when I was told that,
Yeah.
when I was told that was happening, I said, that's not allowed. I don't know what you're talking about. Because the idea of expenditures, it's supposed to be global across the sports. JV, varsity, every kid is supposed to get a benefit of those fundraisers, not just a specific group. I don't know what happened. I found out, I think after the fact, that they did that. None of that money went through the Booster Club. None of the expenses were paid by the Booster Club. That's clear. That was independent of Booster Club activity.
But so if something like this were to happen in any sport, the Booster Club does not participate in helping them raise funds for it? Or
For what? A trip?
Any trip like this for any sport?
Historically, we have not.
Okay.
It's usually funded by the parents.
It's funded by the parents?
Parents.
Can I ask a question for clarification? The fundraiser that against that $12,000 check that eventually got deposited, was that a fundraiser that was approved by the Booster Club? Or is this one of the fundraisers that you're wearing that's been going on without the approval of the Booster Club?
I will tell you, it eventually was approved by the Booster Club. A year before that, they wanted to do the same fundraiser. It was rejected because it was a money grant, and I have documentation for that. It was a straight money grant with nothing in return, so it was rejected. In lieu of that, they decided to do a bottle and can drive. I don't know how far we want to go here. So, on December 15th, I got an email from Cheryl Comm, who got an email from the athletic director, asking for our EIN number. And all the number is, it's the same as a school district. It's for sales tax. That's the number I give out to people. I tell them this is not a 501c3. So, in speaking with the Spirit rep at that time, I said, because if you went to the front page, the home page of that fundraiser, it talked about senior gifts, it talked about banquets. I said, we don't fundraise for that. But they were somewhat far along in that fundraiser, so I couldn't say no at that point. So I said, if you change that homepage to say that we're fundraising for equipment and infrastructure, then let's go ahead and do that. And I had to have conversations with the Stackers people to change that homepage. This is the purpose of the fundraising. And I asked them to not reach out to businesses because they're not getting anything in return, just reach out to family and friends. And that's what happened. I didn't become aware of that until December 15th, that was happening.
So if any sport, if wrestling is going to go into a conference and they're going to, all the parents are going to go with their children to watch them compete, the money for that trip is not raised through the boosters, is that correct?
Historically, that is correct.
Okay. And who raises the money for those trips?
I have no idea since it's not Booster Club. I don't know if there is a trip like that. I don't know if people are raising it. I don't know.
Okay.
As a parent actually having that at that point, if it's not through the athletic fund itself, but the athletic department, the parents would pay for that. And that's not uncommon for years. Being a parent who did pay.
Yeah, the Booster Club is not involved in it, so I have very limited knowledge of what trips there are and who's paying for it and what they're doing.
Yeah, again, any kind of competition that the wrestling team would go to, wrestling is one of the sports that typically has to travel to 1 or 2 day tournaments. That is part of the athletic department budget. We use the district van, or we have to get a bus. We pay the fee to enter into the tournament. And if you remember from that 3-year profit and loss, wrestling is one of the sports that loses money over a 3-year average because they go to so many tournaments. Now, we don't want to discourage that, but we do have to get a little bit better at managing the in and out of that. So we want to end in the black.
So what about hockey?
The Fenway trip,
Yeah.
I'd have to ask Mr. Bernadette as to what the cost of that was in terms of beyond transportation and what we had to pay Fenway to be a part of that. I don't know. I know that it was a community member that advocated that Minichog was one of the teams that was able to play, but I don't know the costs associated with that. But we transported the team, and they played for that hour that they were given next time.
And any parents that come along would be paid for by themselves?
Well, it would be just like if they went to Chicopee Comp's basketball game, right? Chicopee Comp is there collecting fees for them to come in. Fenway Park was collecting fees for people to come in. We didn't pay for anybody's tickets.
Thank you. So in an effort to save time and to stay on task with our agenda, we
Sure,
are
I'll
going
bring up one
to...
thing actually, because it's really important for the statement made before, if you don't mind. 2 numbers are issued, and just so clear the point, 15,000 was raised, a certain number was put in the account. The difference is what, and where did that go?
I think it went to the mobilization.
It did? Okay, that's not counting at that point. The question is, a lot of times that happens. We have to be careful of that too. Unfortunately, that's trust. And that has been the biggest issue in the last 45 years. Not one team, not all the teams, a certain ones.
So as previously mentioned, we are waiting for legal counsel. We refer this to legal counsel, and they will be doing some research, and we are waiting for legal opinion. We are going to go off out of order, and we are going to move to...
Michelle, can I just say one thing before we move on? Sorry. I just wanted to say that, thanks to Mike and thanks to Ron. The Booster Club has been around for longer than all of us, and we have to keep in mind that it was created to prevent embezzlement. It was created to provide equity among all of the sports programs. In all of these discussions that I've heard, and it sounds to me like more of a communication issue in terms of exactly what the process is with regards to fundraising and how that process needs to be followed. But I would like to personally thank both of you and the other members of the committee for doing what you've done as far as the Booster Club is concerned. I don't know where we're going to be without the Booster Club, and I would respectfully ask you if you could please make sure that this organization continues going forward. I think that it needs to be a very clear communication with all of the spirit groups as far as exactly what the process needs to be followed. And I think that we need to do, depending on what happens with regards to authority, if it's something that does fall on the school committee, then it's our responsibility to make sure that that the processes are followed. But I really do appreciate all the stuff that you guys have done. Ron, you're around here all the time. I walk the dogs, and I see you here every time I walk. So I'd like to thank you guys very, very much, and all the members of the Booster Club.
Oh, I enjoyed it. We wouldn't do it if we didn't.
Thank you.
So we move on to public comment. So we will call, has anyone signed up for public comment? Do we have a list? So we will call on those who have signed up for public comment. We do ask that when called, that each person state their name and their affiliation with the district. If you could sit at a microphone, make sure it's turned on, and you can speak for up to 2 minutes. And if you have any documentation that you would like to share with the committee, please make sure that you hand them to Erin Dowding before you begin. Would anyone like to speak? If you can turn that microphone on here.
Hi, good evening. My name is Carrie Tarpey from Cumberland. I am one of the hockey moms that appeared at the last meeting. What I just want to kind of reiterate is the communication issue. I know I've communicated with Mr. DiCruzio twice, requesting that he provide me with the names of the people who serve on the board and who the officers are of the Booster Club. I have not received a reply to those 2 requests. They've been outstanding for about a month. So I'm interested to hear tonight who these people are, but I think that's an example of why us parents are distressed and concerned that we can't get responses to simple questions like that. I've also been told by Mr. DiCurzio that the hockey parents who expended sums would be reimbursed for sums that were expended. I did send Mr. DiCurzio my receipts for the sums that I expended on behalf of both the varsity and the JV banquet, which occurred on April 2nd at Country Club of Wolverhampton. I did send that to Mr. DiCurzio a few days ago. I asked him to confirm receipt. I have not received a response to that either. I'm hoping that perhaps tonight could be a new beginning and we're going to get some responses. But as I sit here, I have to tell you I'm concerned that it sounds like Mr. DiCurzio accented himself in the position in the Booster Club. I don't know what the May 11th letter says. And it doesn't seem like there's a board of directors that's currently functioning. So I understand the school committee is looking for legal counsel on this. It's concerning to me because I don't know if there's even a person who has authority to issue reimbursement checks at this point. I hope so. I've been representing that by Mr. DiCurzio, so I will leave it at that. I'm not here to go on a witch hunt, but our concerns on the part of the hockey team don't seem to be well addressed by tonight's meeting. I remain very concerned. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that is interested in speaking? Sure. If you would please state your name and your affiliation with the district. Thank you.
My name is Diane Dio. I live at 6 Drumlin Circle. I have two children who've been athletes in the district, one who graduated last year and then a son who is currently a rising junior. I've worked with Mr. DiCurzio on the turf for a long time. I think the issue is that the parents feel cut out of the Booster Club. We feel that we are asked to raise money to support the teams, and we do as much as we can, as much as possible. But there are lack of transparency as far as when meetings occur. Those are supposed to be open to all. The May 11th meeting, that's interesting, didn't know that was occurring. It would have been wonderful for parents to be able to attend that. Apparently, as a member, we should be able to attend that, and as a parent of an athlete, I am a member. And I think that's what we're asking for, is openness, transparency, and more involvement of the parents. I appreciate that there's a lot of discussion around the athletic director and the coaches, but having spoken with some coaches, they don't understand the process. They don't really care who the Spirit Club rep is. They're just happy that there's a parent that steps up. There's very much lack of understanding of exactly what needs to happen. And I am a member of the Minnetonka Music Association Booster Club. I am the treasurer of that club and an active member of the board. And we do things a lot differently. And I really like to see that sort of organization come forward. There are many of us, many parents, who would love to be on the board. We have, in fact, raised our hand, asked to be considered, and have not been considered, and don't know why. There are many, many parents in this community in Hamden and Wilbraham, and also those that are in school choice, who also serve on athletics, who would very much raise their hand, be on the board, and rewrite, amend, improve the bylaws, and do it collectively with a group of parents and a group of coaches and others from the community, because we do ask the community for a lot of support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Alan Davenport from Hamden. My children have long graduated from here. My baby's 42 years old. So I just would like to address the committee about two things. Number one, I'm not so if the committee could reach some clarification of the status of the 501c3. The website for Turf and Trog says Minnetonka Booster Club is a 501c3 corporation. But I understand that you're saying the Booster Club is not.
No.
Well, your website says that.
No.
No.
Okay, sorry.
And the other thing too is I would suggest that we speak to your legal counsel that they check and see if the Booster Club has to be registered with the nonprofit and public charities division of the Attorney General's office and the Secretary of State. I think that would go a long way towards transparency if that was the case. They may not, but I noticed that there was over 100 booster clubs in Massachusetts from different schools that are registered. And I believe the Minnetonka Music Association, if I get the name right, is registered with public charities for fundraising, so maybe the legal counsel could check that too. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that's interested in speaking? Okay, thank you very much. Did you have any closing remarks?
Hey, I'd like to clarify the last statement, so just grab the microphone. Sorry. As I mentioned earlier, there are two different booster clubs. You are 1,000% correct. There is a 501c3 for the turf field, which is entirely different than the booster club that we're talking about today. The 501c3 is registered in the state, it is registered in the federal government as well as a 501c3. This booster club that we're talking about, if you heard the conversation before, is nothing more than a club. My understanding of it anyway, is nothing more of a club. It's a separate entity to the 501c3. Two different animals.
May I respond?
We're not going to. No.
It's not registered with the state.
Thank you, everyone, very much. Thank you for all that attended. Thank you for your public comment. Thank you to Ron, and thank you to Mike for being here, and for Steve for your input as well. This will be a future agenda item as we learn more and get more information and legal opinion from our legal counsel. So thank you. So we are going to move on to new business. We're going to turn to Gina Roy for the change start date of preschool.
So we just have a simple request.
You got one that doesn't work.
Okay, so we just have a simple request. Currently on the school calendar, preschool starts on Thursday, September 7th, and we're requesting that that date be moved to Monday, the 11th, to give the preschool teachers and the paraprofessionals extra time to conduct their home visits, to be able to have an orientation, to have the parents come in with the preschool students. I apologize for not noticing that it happened the day after kindergarten, the start date, but we do need a little bit extra time because the preschool staff typically help to support the transition of the kindergartners as well. So we'd just like to move it back a little bit and have the preschoolers start on Monday, September 11th instead of the 7th.
When would their last day be?
The same. Preschool's not bound by the same number, 180 days.
Okay.
Did you say anything?
I was just going to say that.
Okay. So do the motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. So we will do roll call vote since Mike is online. Bill?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Lisa?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Mike?
Yeah.
And myself, yes. The motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
Can I just ask you a quick question? How many preschool kids do we have enrolled at this point?
I don't have the exact number, but we have four classrooms, 2 in Wilbraham and 2 in Thank you.
We will move on to the Assistant Superintendent of Finance Operations and Human Resources, Aaron.
Sure thing. Oh, it seems like it's still not. Just kick that out for now, and I will take the volume up or something. Okay. All right. So you should have 2 financial reports. Yay, because we're between years. Very exciting. So I will start with the fiscal 23. You'll see at the top it says HWRSD FY23 General Fund Report. So for the new folks, we have a few years of past actuals. We have the current year budget. We have what we've spent to date, what we've encumbered, and then a total, and then what's remaining in that budget. You'll see a lot of red and a lot of black. You know, this is not atypical. We have some items that we go over budget on, some items that we go under budget on. You know, in particular, we've talked about it a lot. Our teacher budget actually has been, instructional budgets have been lower because we've had a lot of people on leaves and extended leaves. unpaid leave, and we've had some transitions. But that is then recognized in our substitutes line, which is way over budget. So, you know, those things do balance out. I won't dwell on every detail. At the end, you'll see we have a running total. This is as of July 10th of $362,502. I expect we've had some utilities bills come in and things like that. I expect we will finish the year about $250,000 to the good when all is said and done. Any questions? Hearing none, I will move on to the even more exciting fiscal 24 budget. This has a lot less detail, same format. You will see fiscal year 23 actuals are to be determined. We haven't finalized those yet. But this actually will give you a good sense of our overall budget. So on the left-hand side, towards the left-hand side of fiscal 24, you will see the actual budget for each of these line items. So if you're new to the committee, you will know what those budget line items are. I would not put a lot of stake in the $22 million that we have remaining at the bottom. This is the point where we are putting in all of our encumbrances. So many of our encumbrances aren't in. So things like electricity and heating of buildings, we will encumber some of those over time as we start to see bills come in. Additionally, things like health insurance, long-term debt. So that number over the next couple months will decline very rapidly. Given we have a $52 million budget, you know, 30 million of that largely is what we've already encumbered. We haven't spent very much. That is all of our salaries that are now encumbered. There are some vacancies, so those wouldn't typically be encumbered. So I would suggest having a little patience with us as we begin to encumber things, and things will become more apparent in September. But I'll continue to provide reports. I will also note that some of the headers did not carry down to page 2, and I apologize. I don't know what happened there, but I will fix that for the next meeting. Any questions on fiscal 24? Okay, great.
Aaron, exactly what is the magic date that we switch from 23 to 24?
Say what again? Oh, what day? We're a July 1st to a June 30th. Yep. It should be the same as the towns, right? Towns should be July 1st to June 30th. Yeah, looking at you, Don. So the next item on my list is I'm happy to announce that we are in a movie. We have a production company that is filming a movie on site at Minnechaug. Last week, a number of us, I want to say Jimmy did a lot of the legwork, Jim Bissonnette here at the high school, taking them around, letting them look at sites. We worked with our location team. We also took them to Wilbraham Middle School to look at some spaces. They decided that they really like Minnechaug. It's a nice building. So they are filming. They filmed their first day yesterday. Their second day is tomorrow, and you have an invite here. They need extras tomorrow at 4 to film in the Minnechaug High School auditorium. Yes, so Don, yep, exactly. Get yourself dustied up. There's an email address you should email if you're interested. The movie is called The Greatest Ever. I believe it's about a high school softball team. Sounds like it's going to be a feel-good movie. You know, I think they take on an autistic student joins the team. That's the best I got out of them. So, sounds exciting.
They're not on strike? They're not on strike?
I think they've avoided the strike for this.
Yeah, I did ask that question.
They're independent, right?
They've negotiated something that is acceptable to the, is it SAG?
SAG. Okay. Yep. So that's mostly information. I don't need a vote, but I need a vote on the next. The next is an annual authorization that the school committee does of all of our student activity accounts. So every year it's required that the school committee authorize our student activity accounts. By and large, our accounts are the same as last year. I would like to note that we're adding a military community club. That is a new account. We'd be looking to be adding that. And there's a name change towards the end. The former Diversity Culture Club is now the Students of Color Alliance. So with that, I would ask that the school committee approve these accounts.
So moved.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion?
How do you decide to bring a new club? What's the process?
Hmm?
What's the process of a new club?
She asked what's the process
they
of
would
a new
work
club.
with the high school administration. They need to have enough student interest in a club, and then get a student, an advisor, a faculty advisor of some sort to be the advisor of that club. Typically what they would do is recognize the club in the first couple years with sort of an unpaid stipend until it's running. Once it's running, we talk about whether we add it into the mix of stipends we pay. So I believe this position is currently unstipended, but in future years we may see it stipended, a request to have it stipended.
Does Steve or the administration at Minichog audit the clubs to make sure that they're still functioning?
Active, yes. So one of the assistant principals is in charge of student activities, so that they're over student activities, and they should be keeping tabs. We do, when they have student activity accounts, we do audit them annually. So my office will do an internal audit 2 years, and then the third year, our actual external auditor does a separate audit. So by law, if you have more than $75,000 in a student activities account, you have to have it formally audited every third year, and then you need to do an internal audit for the other 2 years.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
I'm curious about the military community event or club.
Club? Yep.
Is that for children, students whose parents are in the military, or is that for students wishing to go to the military?
I couldn't answer that. I think, yeah, I couldn't answer that. That would need to go to the high school principal or the assistant principal who's in charge of that. I can ask. Yeah.
Okay, we will do roll call vote. Bill?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Sean?
Aye.
Lisa?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And myself, yes. So motion carried 7-0. Thank you, Erin. So we will move to subcommittee updates. We just reorganized. I do have a quick update for just the planning committee, just a reminder for everybody that we've been having conversations about the potential reconfigurations of the buildings. So the superintendent has been at Rice's. He was at Rice's on Tuesday, July 18th. He was at Mountain View today, July 20th. There will be a virtual event available on July 25th from 6 to 7. And there's a Zoom link available on the website. There will be, on August 8th, an event at Rice's Fruit Farm from 9 to 10. On August 10th, there will be an event. The location is to be determined. And then there will be another August 15th virtual event via Zoom from 6 to 7. So if you can attend those, that would be great. Spread the word.
And for those who are listening online, it's all on the school website. It's all on the school website, the district website.
Okay.
So on August 10th,
Monday the 7th.
Monday the 7th at the Hampton Public Library at what time? So from 10 to 11. Okay.
Just a question. So the reconfiguration plans that we have, we're having 6 through 8 at the high school. That's going to require, I mean, 6 through 8. 8th grade moves to the high school, 6 and 7 at the middle school. That will include students from both towns. That will require a change in the regional agreement. Has there been any discussion about expanding the change in the regional agreement to basically make the district K-12? And if so, what are the only reason why I say it is because if we're going to take a bite out of the apple, I think we might want to go for the big bite. I think it might give, I know it would give the administration more latitude with regards to the reconfiguration process. So I just need to know if there's any discussions regarding that. Because eventually the change in the regional agreement will have to come from this body.
There have been conversations regarding that, all of the options, every option, but that has been a conversation at some of the groups that have come.
Good. Okay.
I think it all comes down to where the rubber meets the road, how it's written. We want to make sure that the people in Hampton don't think that there's going to be some kind of bait and switch or whatever. We want to be open, we don't want to be transparent, we want to be honest with how we're presenting this. So I would just say, however we write it, it just needs to be very detailed, very, so that everyone understands really what's going to happen.
And in these sessions, they've really been more of a, it's a dialogue, but it's all listening sessions, so people are able to share, their thoughts, their concerns, ask questions, because there's more information that needs to be made available, and the district administration is currently working on looking at the costs that are associated with making these changes, because there will be costs associated with each one of these selections.
Absolutely.
And perhaps that, it may come out in the end that people don't support any of our options, but we need to make sure that we're providing all the information and understanding that this will come from the school committee, but it does come down to each town has to vote. And we do have to have, both towns vote for whatever change that we do make, and we do need to have approval from the commissioner.
When are we meeting again for planning?
I was going to say all those things. I will be addressing the community meetings in my report, so we'll go into detail on that. That's fine.
When will planning be meeting next?
We don't have a date yet.
Okay.
So maybe after some of these listening sessions, there's been two, we'll have an email go out about it to see when people are available. It'll be nice to have some feedback to discuss, kind of what's been heard so far, and some of the concerns, or even, where people are engaging. So if you could spread the word, that would be helpful. So we will move on to the consent agenda.
Make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Discussion? Okay. Roll call vote. Bill?
Abstain.
Cheryl?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
Rich?
7, yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And myself, yes. So motion carries 6-1.
And the warrants are here, just make sure we get a chance to sign them.
So we will move on to the superintendent's update.
Thank you. Work continues on the development of our new website. I want to credit our developer with an apt catchphrase that sums up the vision we're driving for, which is a transition from the district's online presence being an FTP server to a modern public-facing website. So we're focused on getting the district website as good as it can possibly be, because once that task is complete, we'll have a model that we can replicate for the school websites more quickly. Right now, The website review and evaluation team is providing feedback on draft district website, which has been, I would say, 80% developed. And we've scheduled time on the third day of our administrative retreat to train the administrative staff to maintain the new website when it's launched. The maintenance is going to be much more simplified, which should allow us to have a much more dynamic and changing presence, so there'll be a reason for going to the website, and also not as much clutter from information that doesn't belong or be relevant anymore. Speaking of the administrative retreat, I'd like to invite any members of the school committee who can join us for the morning portion of our final retreat day, which will be from 9 to 12:45 on Wednesday, August 9th at the Bethlehem Church in Hamden. Our focus for the morning will be training administrators to provide teachers with better feedback on the tasks they provide students and the ways they respond to student questions in math classrooms. This will support our work on building thinking classrooms, which is a set of 14 evidence-based teaching practices that we are attempting to create more engaging math instruction and higher student math achievement. And if you're on the fence about whether spending a morning with a bunch of administrators discussing methods of teaching math is a good use of your time, let me see if I can entice you with a gift from our curriculum director. So, just for coming tonight, you can have your own copy of Peter Lillendahl's Building Thinking Classrooms. And if you can only make it for lunch, we'd still certainly like to have the opportunity to share a meal with you in a more informal setting. So please, if you can, join us on the morning of that retreat. We'd appreciate to have you there. Finally, I'd just like to update the committee on my community outreach efforts, which we've begun discussing already. As you know, a survey on district reorganization went out to the school community on June 26th. To date, we've received 198 responses. Following the lead of television networks, I don't want to broadcast results before the polls are closed for fear of biasing those who haven't responded yet. And given the timing coming out at the end of the school year, I'd like to leave this survey open so that we can use the communications about school reopening to direct people who haven't responded yet to give them an opportunity to share feedback in that way. Just to put a little bit more detail on what you've heard already, I met with 12 people at Rice's Farm on Tuesday and 4 at Mountain View today. And I have 4 more sessions upcoming, including 2 virtual sessions. The dates are already given. I feel comfortable sharing some of the things from the community meetings because that was qualitative data. In those 2 sessions, I heard a diversity of opinions touching on things ranging from the history of the 2 communities and how this has affected trust, the desire to maintain 8th grade algebra and to expand foreign language instruction, class size, and the desire for a full-day preschool. Although there were many strong opinions, there were also many appreciations for the transparency of the process and for the opportunity to engage in 2-way conversations about the possible futures of the district. So we will keep the conversation going and continue gathering input from stakeholders and using their input to inform our planning process as we work on this component of our strategic plan. And that's my report.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. So we will feature agenda items. We have what do we value, what will education look like in the next 5 years, transportation.
Booster Club. Another thing that came up, which I don't know if it really fits under the purview of the school committee, but I've had a number of people reach out to me. All of the plans that we have for the 24-25 school year involve moving the 8th grade to this school. The concern basically centers around the rec athletic programs and the possibility that once the 8th graders are in this building, they will be eligible for participation in high school athletics. And the fear on the recreation side is it's going to gut some of those programs if you have kids that are pulled up. And I know that we have I know that we have some sports programs that there's a deficiency in athletes, so we've allowed them to pull kids up from the middle school. Again, I don't know if it's a discussion, but I think it's something that we should keep on our radar screen because it's something that's been said to me several times. So, and I would do everything that we could to make sure that we are maintaining a robust recreation program. I understand that we have some athletes who, may very well be able to elevate themselves to a level of play moving from 8th to 9th grade, but the deficiency comes in that we have a lot of other kids who are not at that level, and their success on those teams may be limited because of them. So something to think about. Let me give you the back of our mind. It's sort of one of those, not really an afterthought, but it's kind of like, okay, we got to at least figure that into the equation.
Yeah, I was led to believe that it would be an option. So if they are in 8th grade and they excel at a certain point, they would have the option to. I don't think it's going to take anything away from 8th grade's, athletics.
Yeah, I would strongly disagree. If you make it an option, I don't know if you have an athlete, let's say in a sport like lacrosse, and they decide that their child is good, and they want to have access to the JV program and the coaches that they're going to be working with. I think making that an option, you'll drag a lot of kids away. One of the downfalls that I see in that, however, is that if you have an 8th grader that sets their sights on going to the JV level and then doesn't make the JV level and hasn't registered at the rec level, now they're nowhere. So stuff we really need to consider.
I'm glad you brought that up because there's a lot of kids who are, I'm glad you brought that up because there's a lot of children who in the 8th grade who start out very short, and by the time June rolls around, they've grown several inches. And sometimes that doesn't occur until the fall, that goes through.
Thank you.
Is there any reason that children wouldn't be able to choose to participate both in the rec sport and if they are successful in auditioning JV as well?
You're not allowed to. It's against MIA regulations. So if you're participating in a varsity sport, you are not allowed to participate in recreational sports as well. I believe a lot of that comes in basically for the health of the athletes.
Thank you. Any other items?
I'm going to be participating in some of the.
Turn on your.
To see.
Yep.
I'm going to participate in some of the future meetings by Zoom, and I had a really hard time hearing Mike because the speaker and the projectors are really bad speakers. So I propose to put a Bluetooth speaker right there on that table. You can connect the Zoom output to the audio to the Bluetooth speaker. We hear everybody a whole lot better. So just, you're not that expensive, just a nice Bluetooth speaker there for the next meeting.
Thank you. We do have a need for, I will say our next meeting is, does this work for everybody? Looks like it's Thursday, August 3rd. Does that work for everybody? Okay. Okay, well, that's what's on the schedule. If enough of us are here, we can certainly look at rescheduling. Okay, so we do have the need for executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, C, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of public body and the chair so declares. Appendix B stipends.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. So we will not be returning to open session. We will be simply coming back to adjourn. We will be adjourning from executive session. We will not be returning to open session. We will be doing roll call vote. Bill?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Lisa? Aye. Rich?
Yes.
Mike?
Aye.
Okay, and myself, we are now adjourned from open session. It is 8:39. Thank you.